Alpha.
Down the Biscayne. Yeah. 5 on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars. Wearing rubber frauds. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing. Got it all banned. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust.
You sound scared.
It's about have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome into 5 on the Floor Live. We don't know why you're here. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me, Ethan J. Skolnick, at 5 Reasons Sports. We got Greg Sylvander. You can follow me at Greg Sylvander. We got Brady Hawk. You can follow me at Brady Hawk 305. Thanks to all of you who joined us on Playback. We all got canceled. Don't know if we'll be back there again, but no, you can follow us for every game. Brady, you haven't been on in a while. You got to join us. You got to join the party over at Playback. All right, the Miami Heat win tonight against the Nets. I don't know if this is a case of them really looking that good or just the Nets are that bad in their current state. The Heat had, what was it, ended up with 23 turnovers? Is that right? I think
22. Fitting.
Oh, appropriate number. 22. By the way, we're going to be out of this in 22 minutes. So that's it. Get your questions in, but we don't work a day beyond 22 minutes. We're going to cut it off right there. 22 turnovers for the Heat tonight, but they still win 106-97. We'll get to the player of the game a little bit later, but there were 5 players in double figures tonight. That did include Terry Rozier, although the tweets at me would not suggest that. He had 17 points tonight, or 16 points tonight, and they overcome. D'Angelo Russell had some moments, had 22, but overall, this is an outmanned Nets team that is playing for the lottery and is probably going to get worse as they go forward. And that's sort of the overall point here. As the Heat are back at 500, no matter what kind of problems they have, they're not going to be able to fall out of the play-in. They're going to be between 7 and 10. I think that's where we're headed. Could they get to 6? Maybe after a Jimmy trade, if they bring in some pieces that help, possibly. But the most likely scenario is they're going to be somewhere between 7 and 10 and participating in those play-in games because the bottom of the East is still a beep show. I mean, it's Washington, it's Charlotte, it's the Nets, it's Toronto. Those are 4 teams that we knew were going to be worse than them. And you're not going to get worse than them. And Chicago is probably trading off players, and Philadelphia is a disaster. Maybe they could pick it up a little bit, I guess, but they've been really bad. So I guess, Greg, the overall point is that we're watching these games, but it just feels like we're sort of spinning in mediocrity here. They're going to be a play-in team for the 3rd straight year, and they're probably, we don't know yet, because by the way, listen to the podcast I did with Adele today, because we gave all the Jimmy updates there, and there was some stuff that I put on Off the Floor first, some updates I haven't seen anywhere else. So make sure you listen to that podcast. But the only difference is they're not going to have Jimmy to save them, most likely, or in the play-in like he did 2 years ago. But essentially, that's what this is. We're watching a play-in team that is good enough to beat some bad teams, but is going to have trouble leveling up against the better teams.
It's true. And there's still a game out of the 6th seed and a couple more from the 5th seed. And I think that that's going to be the allure of the organization trying to kind of make it through this point, this weird moment with Jimmy Butler. And we're going to try not to obviously drown this episode in Jimmy Butler talk, but I think until that cloud lifts, there's going to be a weird kind of vibe here. It feels like they're kind of stuck in a purgatory moment, but I just would say this, that they've done this all season where they like win 3 in a row and then lose 3 in a row, and win 3 in a row and lose 3 in a row. So they've been on this seesaw battle, but all it takes is you to be on that streak at the end of the year. And all of a sudden, like I just said, they're only a few games out of being in a top 5 seed in the conference. You can say that's false hope. You can say that that shouldn't be the way that they're approaching this, but ultimately I think to get through this season, they're not going to necessarily lay down and try to quote unquote like tank or even soft tank or like anything like that. So they are where they are, but I think that they're within striking distance. And if you didn't have striking distance of a seed in the playoffs that's out of the play-in, let me confirm, I do not mean to imply that they're a contender. But if you had that $48 million of Jimmy Butler, that percentage of your payroll, contributing on the court regularly, maybe you make a push to 5. And I think that that's probably the best case scenario for this group this season. And that's the reality.
So the turnovers, I mentioned 22 turnovers. Actually, 13 of them were committed by 3 of the guys who played the best for them overall tonight, which was Hero, Bam, and Jovic. So they got production out of those guys in other ways. I want to go to the player of the game because I'm curious who Brady's going to pick.
And now it's time for the A Aggressive Insurance Player of the Night, sponsored by our friend Lynette. You can find her at insurancebylynette.com. That's with 2 N's and 2 T's, insurancebylynette.com. If you need car insurance, renter's insurance, homeowner's insurance, or any other type of insurance, she's the person to go to. Based in Lauderhill, she services the entire Tri-County area here in South Florida, and she will make sure to get you the best deal. She'll probably talk to you about the heat while you're at it. Reach out to her, insurancebylynette.com. And now, the player of the game.
Who you going with, Brady?
Yeah, I don't want this to look like I have voters fatigue here because, I mean, Tyler could get it every night, and I don't want to take that away from him. Like, this offense would not be here without him. Like, they would not be able to win even these garbage games without Tyler Hero. But with that said, it just felt like Nikola Jovic turned the game around, like it sparked things multiple times. And the reason I bring him up, and I think he's the player of the game, is because after the last game I mentioned that I think one of the biggest deals with this new version of this team is they need to play into his hands and Jaime's as well, but just in a different way. It just feels like, Jaime early in the game, he got to the line a few times. He kind of set the tone a little bit. I thought that's what's needed, but they need to use Nico the way they did in the last road trip. They need to use him as a point guard. They need to use him playmaking over the top, having the ball in his hands, making decisions, because as I said in the last show, he's just not a spot-up shooter. That's not what you do. That's what ultimately why they changed his role around in the first place. So it just felt like tonight they kind of put the ball in his hands a little bit more. They let him play a little bit more freely. He kind of entered the game and immediately got out in the open floor like 3 or 4 times. And it's like he just changes the pace and the vibe of the game. So credit to him. And I just feel like when he starts playing in that role, you start seeing the shot come along a little bit quicker. Like he's not a guy that's going to come out the gate. Like he needs to get into a rhythm before he starts kind of getting into that flow from deep. And I will say this as well. I'm watching even this game, and like this was probably one of his best defensive games I've watched from him. I just feel like he's really grown on that end. Like it is funny to watch. Like think back to some of the games he got into last season compared to where he is now defensively. Like the pure strength. Like watching some of these guys try to post him up, and he's just actually strong now, and he can kind of hold himself. And then the fact he can move his feet, like you're watching him kind of slide on the perimeter a good bit and use his length to his advantage, where he's not using his hands as much. He's more so just playing straight up, and he had that one nice block. So credit to Nico. It just felt like he just controlled the pace of the game, and that's what they're going to have to do here with the new version of this team going young. Lean into your youth. Don't use them as spot-up shooters and use them as role players. These are your guys now. These are the guys you have to lean into.
He's clearly past Jaquez now, right?
For now.
I mean, do you think it's for now? Because I kind of feel like it's more than for now.
I feel like until Jimmy's gone, we can't evaluate Jaquez completely.
Okay. That's fair, but he's getting reps without Jimmy.
You're right.
And tonight, was it 9 points on 2 of 7 shooting? My concern with him is he only has one speed. He is going to have to figure out how to play at a different tempo at times. It's all straight ahead, one speed, no breaks. And I this offseason, like instead of this, it's funny. Everything that they talked about working on last offseason, I would say just scrap it all. Like the only one who it worked for was Tyler, in terms of the more playing off the ball and more spot up shooting and changing his shooting form and all that. Jaquez, lockdown defender, knockdown shooter. Let's figure out a way for him to be effective with what he was doing the year before, but having more counters. And then, Jovic again. It's just, to me, it's just a question with Jovic. He's just putting the ball in his hands. I think you're right. I think it's obvious, and they know it. When he spots up off the ball to take a 3 and he gets his feet set, he's pretty good in those situations. But otherwise, I want to see him have the ball in his hands. And I agree with Crimson. I've said this, and people said I was hating on Jimmy. I actually think Jovic, in terms of offensive gifts, is second on this team. Offensive gifts. I'm not saying that Jimmy is not a skilled offensive player. Obviously, he made himself one. But Jovic has a natural feel for things that if they lean into it, I just think there's a lot more there. Jaquez concerns me more. I think there may be more of a ceiling there with Jaime than there is with Jovic. All right, let's get to this quickly, Greg, because we have to address it. Bam again did not score 20. So that's now 11 straight games, but he did have 17 points, 16 rebounds, and 4 assists. He clearly outplayed Ware tonight, at least.
I thought he could have won player of the game, but I'm biased.
Well, no, I think he was in contention. He was better tonight. There's no question. We got to give him credit for being better tonight. It is amazing to me that Ware's pregame props were higher than Bam's, which just tells you where this has gone. The man's made 4 starts before tonight, and he's 20 years old, and he's ahead of Bam on this stuff. But Kalel was 3 of 11 tonight, and I actually thought Kalel had some rough moments. You could see Spo was getting frustrated with him at times, and this comes on the heels of me reporting today, after talking to some folks in the organization, about how thrilled they are with him. That his motor, which was a big question about him, they have been really happy with what he's done behind the scenes. They all refer to him as like a sponge, and he's a year ahead of schedule. They did not expect him to be doing this until this time next year. They thought maybe halfway through next season would he get this kind of promotion. So they are very, very pleased with him. He was not great tonight. Bam was better than him tonight. Either of you guys can jump in here. 6 of 13 from the field. He made his only 3. Again, you know how I feel about that. He had 5 offensive rebounds, though. Greg, what do we like?
I mean, I like the activity on the glass. They need somebody to do that. Unfortunately, everyone's going to point to the point, or they're going to point to the scoring column, and that's going to be what everyone's looking at. He was relatively efficient. I don't know, like there's going to be games where he's not going to necessarily score 20. The fact that he got a double-double, 16 rebounds is nothing to, and 4 assists for a big. I mean, like he did things that I thought were getting back to some of the comfort spots for Bam. Things aren't coming easy still. I think that this kind of locker room tension hasn't done him any favors, hasn't done the coaching staff any favors, and the Heat aren't necessarily putting Bam in all of the positions to be most effective. And I think to your point about like kind of scrapping some of what they were planning in the off season, they need to just do more and more of that. Keep getting him in his comfort zone, let him get reps to get more and more confidence. Because I mean, even Crotty on the broadcast has said like, you need to look at the basket and stuff like that. So like, It's pretty apparent that they need him to gain his confidence back. And I just don't look at tonight as a game where he went backwards in any way. So I'm taking it as a positive step forward, and people are going to call me a Bam apologist. And I might highlight those comments on our show right now.
Well, you might, and they're all over there. And I know there are people who are just out on Bam at this point offensively. I just think the days of us expecting him to have the 25 to 27, I don't think it's going to happen in the context of this situation, this offense, and where his confidence is right now. I think that if you can get 17 and what was it tonight again, 17 and 16, you take it. They're going to need to find offense from other places. And Tyler has had, every time he's had a bad game this year, he's bounced back like this. So I expected him to have a strong game in this one. This question comes in from Daniel Brown. Can Bam and Ware consistently coexist? Seems like it's been one or the other lately, with Ware's highs being considerably higher than Bam's. That's something they're going to have to sort out. That's one of the things that Alex talked about on the last pod. I will say this, and I'm not trying to be an apologist here either, but I've said this on several platforms now. I think the 2 people who have been put in the worst position during the Jimmy stuff are Spo and Bam. And I just wonder if we get resolution, if maybe his mind clears a little bit. We'll see. It might not. This might just be what it is. But it feels like those have been the 2 people who've been put in the worst spot. And in Bam's case, it's because he's the captain, but he has no control over this situation. So I don't even know how he can get anybody in line in the locker room. You're dealing with a complete loose cannon situation right now. And and Bam never wanted to be captain in the first place. And I don't know if that's one of the things that's been wearing on him. But if you look at it, ever since Jimmy did the no joy thing, Bam has not scored 20. It's 11 straight games. He scored 20 in that game and has not again. Okay, so everybody's like, well, he's got to step up. It almost feels like he's feeling the pressure to step up And I don't know what's going on in that locker room also. And there's just a lot of factors that are coming together. So I'm hopeful if they ever resolve this situation. I recommend you listen to the last pod because it doesn't sound like it's going to be anytime soon. If they ever resolve this situation, that it'll clear Bam's head a little bit. All right. Let's get to the play of the day.
And now it's time for the X-Ray of the Play of the Day, brought to us by our friends over at Mobile C-Arm and Staffing Services. Nelson and his team will bring the X-ray equipment and the staffing to you if you work in a hospital or a medical office. Get a consultation today at c-armandstaffing.com or give them a call at 561-891-9620. Their fleet of trucks at your service. Again, it's Mobile C-Arm and Staffing Services, 561-891-9620. And now, the X-Ray of the Play of the Day.
Brady, what we got?
I would say the play where the Jovic kind of like caught the ball at half court and just threw it over his shoulder, and Tyler just being the player that he is, knowing when a highlight is coming, knowing when to just get the ball up and shoot it. Had an excuse to shoot that left wing pull-up three and makes it. I mean, it's just fun watching those two on the break because Tyler doesn't think and he's just going to react and he's just going to pull and he's just going to go. And Jovic is just kind of just reacting as well, where he's just kind of, it almost feels like most of the time they're looking for Nico on the break so then he could figure out the next move. Like he's kind of like the QB on the break almost. And he's the distributor there. So I think that was the play of the game. I'll say this in terms of to bounce off of that, because Jovic and Tyler have been a pretty fun duo for some time now. It just feels like that connection has been there. And the third guy I always bring along there is Khalil Ware. They've gotten away from that a little bit. I talked about that the last time. They got Jovic on ball. I'm glad they got able to do that. But they've gone to more Tyler, Jovic, Bam stuff with this new look rotation. And obviously you're playing Bam more minutes. So obviously it's going to link up that way. But I think they have to figure out a way. And this was always my thing with the new starting lineup, was still finding a way to get to that, because I'm watching some of the, we bring up Khalil kind of struggling. There wasn't a ton of great lobs in this game. Like there was a couple all over the place. The one guy that puts the ball in the money is Nikola Jovic with him. To get him into a flow in that dunker spot and let him kind of fly a little bit is to kind of just link their minutes up somehow. So that's what I'll be looking for moving forward. I think they have to figure out the rotation a little bit. Look, they're just trying stuff. I mean, I think Pella, how many minutes did Pella play in this game? Like he jumped in for a few.
5.
Yeah, that lineup was not very good. They went to like a really youthful lineup. I think it was Jaime, Jovic with Pella and Khalil. It was like the last 4 rookies they drafted on the floor together. So they're just trying stuff right now, but I think they have to get back to the stuff that worked. And Khalil and Nico was kind of one of the major ones.
All right, let's try to be fair here. What do we think of Terry Rozier tonight? 30 minutes, just 5th on the team, 6 of 13 from the field. I feel like all those shots were late, though.
Yeah, this is looter on the right in a game that was over.
2 of 5 from 3. I know at least one of those was early. He made his first one, which concerned me. Then he made one late. 8 rebounds.
I don't care if it's in garbage time or not, though. They need to find any part of any game to get him into a flow. Like, I don't care if it's the fourth quarter of Brooklyn or not. Like, it means nothing in the context of this game. But trying to find a springboard to get him to see the ball go in and to find the shots that he can hit. I mean, he had one. I mean, Tyler drove baseline, kicked it to him, and he shot a wing 3. And it's a wide open off the catch 3. But the reason I bring it up is because he just caught it and shot it and didn't put the ball on the floor and take some random step back. He has to just lean into that, man. Like, he has to just take shots at this point. Like, with the role he's in, these, like, one dribble step backs are just – they're not dropping. I know it's been something he's done for a long time, but it's just not working. That he's just got to pull it. Because, look, last year – I remember there was many games last year where we started talking about his catch and shoot numbers were actually pretty good late in the season. There was many games where with all of his threes, he never put the ball on the floor. He literally took no dribbles before any of his threes. And there's this new thing now where he does this. I don't know. He's got to find a way to revert back and just kind of play off the catch.
There was that one, we're not even going to talk about it. There was one sequence and I have no idea what he was doing. It was dribbling between 4 guys. I just threw it up. But again, the raw box score numbers are fine. 16, 8, and 2. You'll take it. He only had 2 of the turnovers tonight. The other players had more than this. All right, I want to, before we get to defending the house here, I just want to let you guys come in on this, and we'll take a couple comments on this as well, because we talked about this on playback, and I talked about it with Adele, and now we're coming up to it. Jimmy Butler is eligible to be unsuspended. Suspension is over. Game is over. Tomorrow there can be communication with the Heat about what they're going to do. I reported earlier today that as of noon today, the Heat did not have a set plan. They were not sure what they were going to do. The one thing they cannot do is just suspend him again. He hasn't done anything to get suspended again. I know people knows there was that incident at the paddle thing yesterday. And he also spoke today. Didn't say anything bad about the Heat. He spoke about how he loved the city of Miami and that they deserve the best and all that. So, but as of noon today, the plan was to try to bring him back. Of course, if he refuses to come back, they could suspend him without pay again. They are still not inclined to send him home with pay. They don't want to do that. I know there are some in our network who think they should do that, at least until the trade deadline. That's what Adele said today on our podcast, which again, I recommend people listen to. But one option I know is being considered is bringing him back and just not playing him, or bringing him off the bench, and I think that is an absolute powder keg. Greg, would you even consider this? I mean, he's calling attention to himself by not going in the huddles as it is.
I'm not bringing him off the bench, but if I'm sitting him, I'm sitting him. Like, if that's what they want to do, like, there's a part of me that could kind of understand that. I think he's too good of a player to not probably try to figure something out. But then there's a part of me that says, what if he gets a high ankle sprain 2 weeks before the deadline? Like, then what the hell do you do? So there's almost a part of it where the prudent approach actually would probably to have him sit until you figure out February 6th what the hell you're going to do. And so I almost think that, and I had heard when they suspended him last time that they really had hoped by Sunday, which is tomorrow, that they could have some sort of resolution. And it sounds like they just haven't made enough progress for that to be viable. So I wouldn't expect anything.
Yeah.
I wonder if this isn't the moment where they kind of decide maybe it's not a suspension, but it's a mutual understanding of sorts where he takes maybe till the trade deadline or something like that. So it's not forever. Yeah. I don't know. This is where it gets murky. And to have a plan, it's difficult to have a plan if you're not working in concert with that other person or their representation. So like when people talk about the Heat needing a plan or you reporting they didn't have a plan, I don't know how you can really devise one when the guy that you're trying to devise the plan with is not aligned with anything you're doing. So, like basically from Jimmy's perspective, he's like, I want to be in Phoenix by Monday, not on the court with y'all. And if that's not done, he's not happy. So what the hell are we doing? Like, it's going to be a tough scenario, but I know that staff and the players have to be over this. And it's just weird that now this is going to be another time where they have to bring him back and we have to go through this song and dance. And I know that the Heat organization hates the fact that we're having to continually approach this over and over again, and it's not going to go away until they find a deal.
I don't want to speak too much for Spo. He's obviously not going to reveal his true feelings at press conferences, but I think you can read into them the fact that he will not say Jimmy's name. Has he said Jimmy's name once all the times he's been asked? He just talks about
I haven't heard it.
Other things? No, right. And that fits with what I've heard about his feelings about the situation. So I know from folks I've talked to that he is not inclined to just sit him on the end of the bench. That's not something that he wants to do. He's smart enough to know what that's going to look like. I mean, that creates more of a circus. But Brady, if he's not going to engage, and the Heat do not believe he's engaged the past 3 games. There's been sequences, but Adele hit on it. It's like he'll make a first effort on defense, but not a second. Like he's doing just enough, to not call attention to himself. I mean, how can they win if they have a guy on the court who doesn't want to be there? Like, what would you do? And then we get to the second part of this, which is what Greg touched on, which is Adele's suggestion, and I see this in the chat also. Well, just keep him out, pay him for the 5 games or whatever, okay, and keep him out until the trade deadline. But then I don't think he's going to be traded by the deadline based on what I'm hearing right now. And so then you're going to have to bring him back again to a team that has already gone another direction here, trying to find an identity. And you see what Jovic's comment after the game, that they had a meeting to figure out what everybody's role was. Every time Jimmy comes back, that changes. It's a nightmare. But Brady, how would you handle it?
So the reason I wouldn't sit him down at the end of the bench is for that reason you just said, where there's a very strong chance that you do go past the deadline. He's still on the roster. And I think it becomes even more awkward than it already is. Like if you have to go from a guy that's sitting on the engine bench, it's like, all right, well, Jimmy, you're a starter again. We're just going to go through this rest of the season and we're going to act like nothing happened. As for right now on the court, I don't really have much of a problem with Jimmy and his effort. My problem with it when he plays is you feel the awkwardness on the court. Like you feel all the players like not wanting to step on each other's toes. Like it almost feels like the rest of them lose their joy. Like you don't have like the fun moments of the game, in between where Nico throwing it over his shoulder, Tyler taking shots, like they get excited. Not saying that it's like in like a totally horrible way that like they just don't want to play with him, but it's just awkward. Like they have a guy that randomly jumps out on the court with them and plays that doesn't want to be there. Like there's no way in the world. Like I think all the honest people in that locker room would acknowledge it's an awkward situation, even if they like Jimmy, which they do. I know, there's a few players on the team, obviously, that are friends with him. They're not going to have a problem with him, but it's just an awkward situation. So how do they deal with it? How does Spo deal with it? I don't know what else you can do other than put him out there and he's just going to play his usual role. The reason I don't worry about it as much is because he does defend. As much as you said about the first effort, second effort thing, it's not like he gives up altogether, because if he did, they could give him a reason to suspend him. And Jimmy's not going to try to just like throw a game out here on Monday and get suspended for 7 games again and lose 7 games of pay. So I think he's going to go out there. He's going to defend to a certain level. My question becomes, you could start him, but you don't have to feel the urge to bring him back in the 8-minute mark of the second quarter. I mean, like there's certain things I think you could do where maybe you cut his minutes out a little bit if he plays in that way where he's not aggressive offensively. So it's going to be interesting. But look, Greg, you said it best, where you just said this is kind of just going to be a repetitive thing. Like this is just going to happen until they find the next thing that they could suspend him for, and then he's going to go home, and then he's going to come back for the deadline again, and it's just going to happen over and over. So we're going to do this podcast 6 more times.
I think they were hoping he pulled a Harden today. I don't know this, so don't aggregate it, but I think they were hoping he pulled a Harden and just called out Pat, called out the Arisons, called out the whole organization, so they had a reason not to bring him back. Like this situation is beyond ridiculous, and really the only solution to it is the one they don't want to do. And I get why they don't want to do it, because it's basically paying him $21 million on a pro rate for the rest of the year for doing nothing. Okay, so that they can watch him posting Domino's and coffee on his IG when he would be playing games, and they're paying him for that. Like, I understand, like, if you ran a business, I don't care how rich you are, like that's not something that you would want to do. Like,
and then he could opt in.
And then he can opt in and continue this. Exactly. So, and they are motivated to make a trade. Trust me, they want this to be over with. But as I reported on the other podcast and listened to it for the full context, they don't have anything. They don't have anything. The Phoenix got, obviously, in Butler's ear and in his camp's ear, saying that they could move Bradley Beal, and they can't. And so now the whole situation is stuck. The only team they've had any productive conversations with, to my knowledge, is Memphis. And as soon as the word got out that they were having productive conversations, they cut it off at the knees, okay? Because Jimmy doesn't want to go there because they're not going to extend him. So that Memphis backed off is my understanding on that. So, like, you're back to square one. And I don't know if there's going to be more pressure from some of these teams to try to compete and get Jimmy and rent Jimmy by the dead. We did that podcast, Greg. Maybe there will be before February 6th. But right now, this thing looks dead in the water, and it just looks like a total bleep show the rest of the way. And really, the simplest thing to do is the thing that none of you would want to do, which is just pay Jimmy to go home. And that's really the only way to solve the problem. Honestly, I don't see another way, because there's gonna be fits and starts the whole rest of the season if this is the case. Because, like I said, they're gonna start to play a certain way. Everybody's gonna understand their roles, and then, oh, Jimmy's playing tonight. Okay, now what do we do? And it's just it's not fair to any of these other guys. And I know. Okay, and it'll come out later. There are players who just want this done. Just want this done. Doesn't mean they hate him, but it just they want clarity in this situation. All right, so let's get to defending the house.
And now it's time for our Defending the House segment, sponsored by our friends over at The Real Estate Shop. You can find them at realestateshopfl.com. That's with 2 P's and an E, realestateshopfl.com, or at the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram. This is Javier Iglesias and Amanda Martin. They help buyers and sellers in real estate. They're nimble and protective of their clients. They service the entire Tri-County area. That's Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties with a proven on-market strategy. The real estate shop sellers earn the most money in the shortest time frame because Amanda and Javier have a deep understanding of the local market. So check them out. Again, it's at the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram, realestateshopfl.com, or give them a call at 954-268-9812. And now, who defended the house?
Sending him to Sioux Falls would be the play, right? Could they do that? Is he aged out? They changed the rules on that, right? So
But anyone can go down there for conditioning.
I mean, he needs to get back in the game shape. They said that the last time, right? That's the
Could
play.
you
Whoever
imagine
came up
him
with that
taking the Sioux Falls team to the championship down there?
Well, they typically send the players on like connecting flights. Like I don't think they charter. I don't think they'd be okay with Jimmy chartering flight. Oh, can I clear? I'll clear this up here too for those who didn't hear the other podcast. But we appreciate the downloads. The charter did not sit there for 5 hours waiting for Jimmy to show up and whatever that thing the Channing Frye heard. That was the most ridiculous. How do you even report that? And I like Channing Frye. He's a good guy. It's a good podcast. But like, how do you like? Does that make any sense? Like the team was going to sit there for 5 hours, didn't know where Jimmy was. Like, do you don't think that would have been a bigger story?
You can't
Like
hold up
some of the players would have
that
bitched
long.
about that. I mean, it's ridiculous. Anyway, that's not what happened. Jimmy told them, or his representatives did. Somebody, they got to the Heat, that he requested permission to take a separate flight because he had business commitments. And we saw the business commitments. It was the paddle thing in Miami, and it was the coffee thing in New York, okay, when they were going to be up in New York. And he requested, could he take his own charter, which he has done before. And at times, the Heat have said yes, and at times, the Heat have said no. Okay? This is the first time that they said no, that he didn't get on the plane. So the other times when they've said no, they have said no at times. And when they said no at times, he has always shown up. This time he didn't show up. So when he didn't show up, they suspended him. That's what happened. Okay. It's nothing murkier than that. But again, this is because they gave him some privileges they haven't given others. And then they're like, some people are like, well, now they're pulling it back. No, there's a specific reason. They told him they want him to be part of the team while they're trying to find a trade. So no, you can't fly up separately. And when he didn't show up to the plane, they took off. They would. A Pat Riley team is not going to sit there for 5 hours waiting for somebody to show up. Give me a break. All right. Anyway, defending the house. Brady, who do we like tonight?
Oh, wow. We're just going to I mean, you defended the house pretty well from those reports about them just, throwing a football on the tarmac around, waiting for Jimmy for 5 hours. So, no, I will say, I mean, Nico, I already mentioned, I think deserves credit for just his growth defensively. I think they did a much better job in general defensively than they did in the last game. Now, when I say that, this is a 1-game sample size. They played the Bucks the last game. And they just played the Brooklyn Nets. So, I want to make that clear. If they defended better because they faced a much worse team. But they needed to turn that around because this team is not going to beat even the Brooklyn Nets or any of these bad teams coming up in their schedule to remain, 500 if they don't defend. So they defended better because also they need to play on the break. I mean, that was clear. I keep bringing up the young guys and playing out. This is not a team that's going to play into the half court every night against any team. They have to run and just try to force something because I really do believe the only way they can consistently get to the line is if they just create advantages on the break. In the half court, they're just not going to get to the line. That's where they're massively missing Jimmy is slowing down games. If we didn't have an hour and a half halftime, this game would have went by pretty quickly. They're not slowing any of the game down by getting to the line. So, but yeah, I just think they defended better in general.
We went 34 minutes, which is about half as long as the Vince Carter halftime celebration. I never thought, and I love Vince. I'm a big Vince fan. I'm glad that they did this. I never thought that a halftime celebration could drag on longer than the Riley one did this year, which just was endless. Had its moments, but it went very, very long. This one went forever. So anyway, we're at 35 minutes. That's the amount that Jimmy used to play in these games. So we will update you as we get information on Sunday about what they're going to do with him. And we'll just keep doing these podcasts as we get that information. But I mentioned at the beginning, subscribe to Off the Floor. I'm putting more and more there. People are like, "Oh, you never reported that." No, we probably did there. So check it out there. We're not trying to feed the Twitter machine. We'd rather just give it directly to Heat fans there and check it out. And that chat now it's 24/7 now. Like, man, it's a moving train. Like, you stop in and they're talking about everything at all times. So this is the place to get most Heat conversation. We appreciate all of you who've joined there already. Have a good Sunday. Enjoy the football, and we will be back with the podcast as soon as we get an update about Jimmy tomorrow. Have a good one.